I would like to welcome all our excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates and colleagues. Good morning. I am your moderator. My name is Nonhlanhla Fikile Ndlovu this morning, and it is a distinct honor to be able to welcome you to this plenary in terms of focusing on the future of Africa's health response. The theme for ICASA, we know, is catalyzing integrated sustainable responses to end AIDS, TB, and malaria. And this calls us as Africa to a higher ambition. It requires us not only to sustain the progress that we've made, but also to transform the way we approach our public health. The issue of resources, and this also talks to natural resources that we have in Africa, the issue of access and innovation, particularly with digital innovation. So the speakers that we have today are going to line up and challenge us in terms of thinking of those imperatives. The three are interconnected, and they talk to us achieving our sovereignty as Africa in terms of our resources, access, and innovation. So, as I introduce the speakers and they come forward, and they are all here, our first speaker will root out discussion in terms of Africa's own natural resources that we have. Can we ask Professor Regina Appiah-Opong to come and join us? More hands. Thank you. We also have our second speaker, which looks at the imperatives of equity and technology. Following this, we will then look at the digital technology. Our next speaker is Professor Emmanuel Kwasi Torpey, who's looking at equitable access to innovation. Let's give him a round of applause. And then how do we achieve this massive goal? We then will hear from Dr. Modupe, Agueh, Mccracken, who's a public health advisor, to come forward. As we commence, our topic that Professor will be taking us is plant medicines, a rich natural resource of Africa to be harnessed for national development. Professor Regina Appiah-Opong is a distinguished toxicologist with over 3 decades of services in the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research, University of Ghana. She's had leadership roles in different institutions, from clinical pathology, also as adjunct professor at the Ghanaian universities. She's also a fellow in the Ghana Academy of Arts. She played a key role in construction of DNA cassette vector useful for drug susceptibility testing of our anti-HIV drugs using molecular biology. Her research revealed the HIV-1 protease from drug-naive West African patients exhibiting reduced susceptibility to protease inhibitors, which is very important in terms of our drug susceptibility. Professor Appiah-Opong has published extensively and engaged in postdoctoral training at Yale University in the Department of Pharmacology. Her career reflects a deep commitment to advancing biomedical research through interdisciplinary collaboration and innovation. Can we give a round of hands of applause for Professor Regina Appiah-Opong? Over to you.
Thank you for your kind introduction, moderator. Good morning, everyone. I think I would like to stand on existing protocols. Thank you very much. I want to thank the LOC for the opportunity to be here and to share these thoughts with you. So I'm speaking on plant medicines, a rich natural resource of Africa to be harnessed for national development. Can you help me with the slides, please? Okay, so a brief introduction, we have just 15 minutes, so it's going to be very quick. Research and development of herbal medicines, some examples, and then conservation and cultivation of medicinal plants, very important, and then also the economic value of plant medicines, and I'll try to summarize and give some recommendations. Okay, so for this work, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals associated with these are the three. One, first, no poverty. And then also, as I speak to it, you should be able, I hope that you'll be able to identify which ones are coming through, and all of these will come through. Good health and well-being, quality education, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, climate action, and also life on land. So, by way of introduction, herbal medicines play a significant role in a country's healthcare system. And as we heard yesterday, that 80% of rural dwellers, not only in Ghana, but African rural dwellers, we're not saying all of African, we say rural dwellers particularly, depend on them for healthcare. According to the WHO, several developed countries are now getting very much interested in herbal medicines for healthcare. And these are, it's becoming, the herbal medicine industry is becoming a very fast growing industry globally. You will find out in a bit. So plant medicines are employed for diagnosis, prevention, elimination, for physical and mental and social imbalances. Now, they have been used over centuries, and because of that, many assume that they are safe. Are they really safe? Always, everyone is safe. Is that true? Okay. So research is necessary to be able to come to that conclusion. Generally, the safety issues are the major problems concerned associated with herbal medicine. They are the major problems. So I decided to just give a few examples of some of the studies we have done. We have done a lot of studies on plant medicines, malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, so many of them. You will find out if you read my publications. But I just picked just about two of them to just make the point I want to make this morning. So I'll speak first on the anti-malarial studies on a product known as AM1. And this was a decoction prepared from 4 different plants, as you can see there, Jatropha, Gossypium, Physalis, and Dillonix. So they have their local names, but most of you are not Ghanaians, so I wouldn't even bother you with that. So we did a study, and in what we did, our department did this, and we had a herbal medicine practitioner who had his patients, and he said, this is what I use for malaria for my patients, and it is efficacious. This is anecdotal. So we picked up the sample, the plant medicine, and then we went to the Legon Hospital, the University of Ghana Hospital. Of course, they were very careful, but this is what we did. He had 5 patients, his own patients he brought to the hospital, kept the patients in the hospital, and parasitemia was determined, and then the patients were treated over a period, 7 days and then 9 days. After first treatment, one of the patients was very sick, obviously. He had +2, and after the first dose, she had numerous. Numerous means countless, so you don't count at all. When you see that, you stop counting. So what does this mean? It means that the parasites were sequestering, and so when that was given, it brought everything into the bloodstream. And then by day 7, there were 5 of them. 4 of them were infected with P. malariae falciparum, and 1 with P. malariae, 2 different parasites, malaria falciparum parasites. So by day 7, 4 had been cleared. And by day 9, the one with numerous had also been cleared. Now, we went on to do safety studies to find out, well, what else did this thing do in the people? We realized that it didn't affect kidney function, it didn't affect glucose levels, it didn't affect liver function, it didn't affect, so there was no overt toxicity. We did also animal study, and we had similar outcome. So those are the charts you are seeing. Please, can you go back? I quickly go over the charts. So those are the charts you are seeing. So if you see that, for instance, the one that was treated, you see it was the red one, it was low, and after the treatment, goes up all the way. And then after treatment, it dropped all the way down. And by day 9, that person was cleared. Okay. Day 7 was really low, but he went home by day 9. The others left also earlier. That is the other chart also for the P. malariae. Please move on. So as I said, all the safety parameters were there. The only thing we noticed was that we need to be careful with drug interactions, because we saw that there was some modulation of some very important drug metabolizing enzymes, cytochrome P450s. They are responsible for a lot of drugs, metabolism of a lot of drugs on the market. And so if something interacts with them or has an effect on them, you want to look closely and see whether you should take this drug with that drug. Because if they are affecting a particular type of the enzyme, it also means that there's certain drugs that are metabolized by that enzyme that you must be cautious when you are using it together with this plant. That is what it means. It doesn't mean that it's not good, but you have to be careful when you use it with something that you know it shouldn't go with. And so I think I have given the conclusions on that AM1 was effective in treatment of falciparum and malaria, both, and then also there were no side effects, and so we see that the potential for drug interactions is there. Funding is what we need now. We still have the product we are working on, and of course, the herbal medicine practitioners, that is a major problem. Most of them do not have funds. They don't have money at all, and so we need funds to support this work, to move to a larger clinical trial, to do a better assessment of this. If it's not enough, we need a larger number to be able to tell that this is doing what, and so on. And then also, of course, formulation will have to come in, and further toxicity assessments have to be done. So I also will tell you a little bit about cancer, prostate cancer. So this was work done on one of my students, and he looked at moringa. Moringa is quite popular, many people know about it. So we decided, let's look at moringa. What does it do to prostate cancer? And then Phyllanthus amarus also, and then pawpaw leaves, Carica papaya, the leaves. We also looked at that. What did we find? So we used both early stage prostate cancer cell lines, and then the late stage or the resistant cell lines. And interestingly, we found that these products were able to inhibit the growth of these cell lines. We looked, usually when we do this, we also looked at what we call the cytotoxicity. So you take normal cells. The problem we have with cancer is that usually cancer drugs will kill everything, kill the cancer cells and kill the normal cells. That is a major problem with cancer therapies. And so we usually would find out what is the selectivity, level of selectivity. Is it killing the cancer cells and killing also the normal cells? Then that's not a drug. And so we found out that, for instance, if you get to pawpaw or Carica papaya, now pawpaw was the least cytotoxic to the normal cells. So the safety margin was really large. If we move on to the next slide, the safety margin was really large. So pawpaw appeared as but indeed all of them had good safety margins and so on. So we think that further work has to be done. Of course, these are products that people are using anyway. And so that is why we picked them to work on them. What is necessary is that we work more and look closer at the safety, closer at how can this be formulated, how can this be moved on, and so on. Please, you can move on. So looking again now at conservation and cultivation of medicinal plants. Now, conservation of medicinal plants involves protecting, maintaining, and restoring the plant species in their natural habitats. Now, this guarantees a steady, quality, controlled supply of the medicinal plant. Now, the danger is that if we are not careful, because herbal medicine practitioners, and that's why yesterday there was a lot of talk on education and so on. Many people are naive, they don't know, so they continue to harvest, and it gets to a point where the plants are extinct. We don't have them anymore. But now if you step out of your house, suddenly one day I just stepped out of my house and I realized that I saw plant medicines everywhere. And I was like, wow. If you come to that realization, if you know them and you identify them in Africa, you see them all around you, And now I will get to the point where you look at the market economic revenue that you can even, not having to even prepare it, just the plant itself, the revenue that people are roping in and so on. So that is where we must go to be able to come back and do these other things, the research and then cultivation and so on. So as I said, the risk of extinction of medicinal plants is a major challenge. And there's a threshold below which reproducibility or getting it back, it's not possible. And so we must not get there. It looks as if some of our plants are being harvested and overexploited, and that is what we must watch. And we need, of course, we need governments to help us. We need policies around all of these. If you take, you have to put back so that we can all benefit from. Next slide, please. Let's look now at the economic value. That is my last point, the economic value of medicinal plants. Now, the global use. Let's start off with global use of traditional medicines. So globally, that is the picture we have, and this is a picture from the WHO. It's been for a while though, but that is the closest I got for all that shot together. US 42%, hasn't changed too much, and then Australia 48, France 49, Canada 70, Chile 71, Colombia, and then parts of Africa much higher, 80. Okay. And then the global medicine market, and here we see they are roping in billions, and anytime I look at this slide, what saddens me is that when colonial masters, herbal medicines were considered as primitive. Unfortunately, even now, some of us, with all the education, still see a lot of things that we must do something about as primitive. And then now, those who thought it was primitive are now roping in a lot of money, and we are still struggling to accept what we have, and that saddens me. So, for instance, North America, herbal medicine market share by region, we see that by 2023, this is 68 billion they were roping in, and they are projecting that by 2032, they would have about 180 billion from the sale of, sale of the medicinal plants. Drying it, collecting and drying it, just the sale. Please, can we go back? Oh, my time is up. Okay. And then we see that for Europe, we see that for Asia Pacific, and then the rest of the world. Hopefully Africa is in somewhere in the rest of the world. And the figures for Africa are quite low. In fact, here even in Ghana, I was doing my inaugural lecture, and these were slides that I used part of these for my inaugural lecture. I went to the Ghana Statistical Service to ask them, how much are we making currently from the sale of herbal medicines? And unfortunately, I couldn't get the figure. I saw all the other commodities, gold, so and so on, but unfortunately, I was unable to get a figure. So it gives me an idea that even though it may be happening, it's really minimal. But here we are with medicinal plants everywhere, and we need money, and there's money everywhere, and we cannot see it. We are not strategic. We are not looking at it, but we need foreign, money from it. But they are getting their money from there. We are going for it. Why don't we strategically plan as to how we can have our plantations, dry them? You just have to make sure that the galamsey, the mining, and so on, you decontaminate, you find a good place to harvest, to grow, and then you have jobs for the boys. You harvest these, and you export them. If you go online, the hottest ones, the ones that are on the market that people are looking for. So we really, I think that is green gold for us, and we are missing out. That has been a burden for me. After I had done a bit of research on this, I said, wow, why should we be here? And according to WHO, by 2050, herbal medicine sale is going to go to about $5 trillion US. Where will we be? Where will Ghana be? Where will Africa be? Are we planning to make sure that we will also benefit from it? Because we are poor, we need money to make our economies get better. Please move on. So herbal medicine market, as I've said, Africa can compete equally with all the other nations. And so I think that we should put our acts together and see that we do this. Of course, we must remember also that drying has to be done carefully because we have mold. So you don't just collect anything and dry anyhow. It has to be done properly. You know, we have GMPs, the good manufacturing practices and so on, SOPs, everything carefully done. That's actually where I'm going. And then, of course, I gave some examples of economic value. South Africa, for instance, is roping in quite a bit. And then we see values for Morocco. We see Egypt also coming up a bit. Malawi is doing quite well. In some people in their homes, that's what they are doing to manage their homes and so on. Next slide, please. So in summary, I want to say that efforts have been made in the development of medicinal plants. Research, we are researchers. Yesterday somebody said that there is no science, and I was like, So what are we doing in our labs? If there's no science going on, what are we doing? There's a lot of science going on. The only thing is that we need to move it to the next level, and funding is needed to move it to the next level. We need partnerships, strategic partnerships, where we can have industry partners coming together and saying, okay, this whole space is for plantation. When we get this revenue, we are building labs and so on. Herbal medicine practitioners can bring what they have. We will screen them and find out the good ones. When COVID came, that was what was happening. Screen them, and we will be ready for any pandemic that is coming, because Africa has solutions. We have our solutions, but we are not strategic. That's what I think. Especially with herbal medicine, I'm not quite happy. Our research has proven that several herbal medicines are efficacious, they are safe. Of course, some are unhealthy, so we need to do the research and get them out. Researchers require funding from the government and other stakeholders so that this work can go on. Challenges associated with all of these, you know, they're surmountable with research. With research, we will get out of the woods. Next slide, please. So a few recommendations. So to say that for significant economic impact, streams of funding must be invested in medicinal plant research and the industry, and it should be consistent. You know, if you garbage in, garbage out. If you don't sow, why do you want to reap? It's a principle. You reap where you sow. We need to sow, and then we will reap as nations. So we have to do that. We should avoid harmful drug interactions, so we should do the research properly. You can do it. It's not in the woods. We can do the research, and then we would avoid this. Pharmacovigilance is very important, and that is one gap we have. People can't just be taking it. If your forefathers took it for a long time, it's okay, but we have to do the research and be sure that it is safe and so on, so that everybody can accept it and move with it. Traditional medicine practitioners and so on need education. In all our countries, we need to strategize and train them and teach them what they should do. Whatever you do, people are taking the products anyway. So the best to do is to organize them and have training for them. Check their facilities. Are they getting it right? What is wrong? And license them and so on. All those things have to be done. I think that's the last slide. So to avoid the extinction, as I said, overexploitation, uncontrolled deforestation, habitat destruction in Ghana, we call that galamsey, destroying the habitat so much, all of these must be stopped. And governments have the whip to be able to do that. The government must lead the effort to promote cultivation of medicinal plants that are facing extinction. We have a list of them. You can always find them and then replace them. And I will say, finally, that all hands, you and I, all hands must be on deck, because this is a goal. This is something, this is our goal. This is something that is it's a natural resource. You find it outside everywhere. Why are we not doing something about it? Just get land, plantations, employ the boys. You have work for people to do. So this is a message I have for all of us. I want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Opong, and I know we have very limited time, but this is one of the areas that we know we need a bit of time as Africa to go. Our next speaker is Professor Emmanuel Kwasi Torpey, and the topic will be on equitable access to innovative biomedical interventions for HIV, TB, malaria in Africa. And Professor is a professor of family health and the dean of the University of Ghana School of Public Health. He's got over 26 years experience as a physician scientist and a researcher. He's also got Masters of Public Health and in international health from Netherlands School, an associate professor of London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, but importantly as well, he's the first scientific chair of International Conference on HIV treatment, pathogenesis, and prevention research in resource-limited settings. Professor focuses mainly on infectious diseases, which HIV, TB, hepatitis, and COVID recently. Professor Torpey, over to you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. So I would have 15 minutes to do the job on HIV, TB, malaria, and then I also decided to add something on emerging and re-emerging diseases and also neglected tropical diseases. So can we go to the next slide? So this is going to be my outline, and I'll try to do it exactly in 15 minutes. Now, the key message, next slide. The key message for this presentation is, one, we want to highlight some innovative biomedical interventions for HIV, TB, malaria, and others, and outline how Africa can, ensure equitable access to these interventions. Then the second message I want to leave you with is access to this innovation is a matter of health security and sovereignty. Africa must lead in producing, procuring, and scaling up these solutions. We must do it. Now, if you look at the burden of disease, in Africa, Africa's population is what, 1.5 billion. We account for 18 to 19% of the world's population. But sadly, 94% of global malaria cases and 96% of deaths happen on our continent. 11 countries account for 67% of the malaria burden. If we look at children under 5 represent 76% of malaria deaths. Now, if you look at HIV, a quarter of TB cases and 33% of TB deaths again occur on our continent. And for HIV, I think everybody is aware, half of the new cases are on our continent, and as well as 60% of the AIDS-related deaths. This slide is from a presentation from the British Medical Journal. It actually tells us about the trends of the emerging and re-emerging diseases in Africa. And if you look, for the last 20 years, you can see that we are having outbreaks of anthrax, Lassa fever, Rift Valley fever, Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, and all the strange diseases. And you can see that it's getting more frequent and it's also higher. So again, this is a call for all of us for action. This slide actually shows the outbreaks in different countries. So you can see there's a lot happening, whether it's polio, whether it's plague, Ebola viral disease. See, it's happening in several places in Africa. This slide shows the neglected tropical diseases, and there are many of them. So you have the trachoma, you have the schistosomiasis, you have Buruli ulcer, you have rabies. All these happen on our continent, and sadly, we have limited access to prevention and treatment opportunities for these diseases. So why must the narrative change? The narrative has to change because Africa carries a huge burden of these diseases: HIV, TB, malaria, neglected tropical diseases. Now, the majority of the drugs, the vaccines, the diagnostics, and the commodities that we use are imported. And we are heavily dependent on donors. So, we really need to take care of our own populations. So what I have done is that I've pulled, it's not exhaustive, I've pulled a few interventions. And basically, I had a discussion with my colleagues, TB experts, the malaria experts, and then, I put their head together and I asked them, what interventions do you think can help us make a difference in the fight against TB, malaria, and HIV? And one of the key things that came up was vaccines, malaria vaccines. The WHO has 2 approved vaccines. The first one is the RTSS. The efficacy is just under 40%. And this vaccine was actually piloted in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi, and is currently being rolled out. The second one is the R21 vaccine, which also showed very good results, and then combined with other interventions, had about a 75% efficacy. And these 2 vaccines actually work on the liver stage. Then the third one, which is still in the pipeline, is the RH5.1, and that one will work on the blood stage. So these are vaccines that we need to ensure that it's accessible to our populations. The second thing I want to talk about on malaria has to do with the Anopheles stephensi. But before I start, you see, if you look at our part of the world, in your secondary school biology, they say the vector for malaria is the Anopheles mosquito. But when you look at the Anopheles mosquito, there are different types of the Anopheles mosquito. In our part, we have the Gambi, we have the Arabiense, and others. Now, these vectors normally do well in the rural areas and then in the wet season. Now we have a new threat of the Anopheles stephensi. The Anopheles stephensi originally is a native of South Asia and then in the Arabian Peninsula, Oman, Yemen. Now, this vector has been found now in our region. So, in Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, and everybody is worried. Everybody is worried because the Anopheles stephensi does well in the urban setting. So in the urban setting where, when you go to the peri-urban slums, we have all these water storage containers that we use because we don't have running taps. You have a lot of construction going on. You have pits with water. So this allows the Anopheles stephensi to reproduce all year round. And this is a major threat to our malaria elimination efforts. Now to tuberculosis. Now if you look at if you ask the TB experts, they will tell you where are the missing TB cases. We need to find the missing TB cases. So basically, if like in this room, if this room is say Africa, if we are able to find all possible TB cases in this room and we treat them, we may see the end of tuberculosis, because if you don't have the infection, then there will be no spread. So one of the things that we need to do has to do with case finding. So case finding, the use of digital chest x-rays with computer-aided detection, and then also artificial intelligence will be able to help us, particularly if we have to do mass screening in different locations. And the good thing about the digital x-rays is that it's much cheaper compared to the conventional x-rays, and this would actually help us to scale up. The next thing I want to talk about is TB self-testing. And the fact that, we have the TB lamp. I think there was a skills building workshop on TB lamp. TB lamp typically is used, you use urine to try and detect TB. We use it in persons who live with HIV. The sensitivity is not optimal, but the sensitivity gets better when the person is highly immunocompromised. The CD4 is less than 200. But then we need better tests. We need the next generation antigen test that we can use for TB detection in urine. Then the last one I want to talk about for TB is the new shiny toy. This is from, it's a new device developed by researchers from Tulane University, and this was published in the Science Translational Medicine. And this small, it's like the size of a cell phone. It's battery operated, And you can use saliva, sputum, or blood. And this is particularly important for children because a lot of the children cannot make sputum for testing. So it was tested in the Dominican Republic and the results were very, very encouraging. So this is something that if it's able to be advanced further as a self-test, a point-of-care test, it will be an important game changer as we move ahead. Then the next intervention is actually not innovative. We have known TB preventive therapy as long as I've been in the public health programming. This is one of the few cheap interventions that we have known for over 2 decades. But if you look at the countries across Africa, very few people have been able to take this intervention to scale because of a lot of the operational bottlenecks that we have with our health system. So again, it's not just having a new thing, but you may have an old intervention that is effective. So we need to address the structural barriers that we have in terms of scaling up. Now to HIV. There's always been a lot of discussion on lenacapavir. You know, that came out of the PEPOS 1 and 2 study. I mean, for those who know, PEPOS 1 study was led by our own Professor Linda Gilbecker from KwaZulu-Natal. And this is one of the major breakthroughs in HIV that we have had. Now, access to these agents now is a challenge. And there's a lot of discussions ongoing at the international level how to make these drugs accessible. And I'll show some slides later. So currently, we envisage that it's likely to be widely available in Africa 2027. That is a long time. Then we have cabotegravir. Cabotegravir has been around for 4 to 5 years. But again, when you look at the access, it's nothing to write home about. There's been agreements with the medicine patent pool. There's been arrangement with generic manufacturers to manufacture it for low, middle-income countries. And we really need to do more to make this accessible. The other thing that I want to talk about again are oral agents that are long-acting. So we see in the pipeline, we have the oral preps, islatravir and lenacapavir together. And this is in the pipeline. These are agents that you can give weekly. And then there's also the monthly oral prep. So again, you see we have the injectable long-acting, and then we are coming out with the oral ones. And we believe that all this will make a huge difference in our fight against. So this is what I just wanted to tell you. This shows, this slide is courtesy of AVAC. AVAC is doing a lot of work monitoring access. So this looks at the supply. There's another slide on the regulatory approvals. And you can see cabotegravir and lenacapavir, just a few countries. And even that one, somebody is buying it for us. So we really need to do more so that these agents will be accessible to our people. Then I cannot finish this presentation without talking about the digital health and interventions. This is the power in our palm, and we need to use it. And you can use it in treatment. You can use it for prevention, for testing, virtual case management. These are opportunities that we have, and we need to try and advance it for our interventions going to scale. So quickly, the barriers, the biggest funding, because we are donor dependent, there are infrastructural challenges, the health system challenges, the policy bottlenecks, and then the capacity issues. Now, 2 important strategies to address this for me is 1, leadership, and the leadership is political leadership. Political leadership and also research leadership. We need to research on the things that confront our continent, and then we need funding. Funding, domestic funding. Funding must come from within. And if we are able to address this, this will go a long way to support us. I mean, if you look at the Lusaka agenda, the Accra Research Initiative, funding is critical, and that would also help us to change the architecture of the global health engagement. So now the way forward, what should we do as Africa? Now, we need to look at the policy and the regulations. The policy and regulation requires that we try to harmonize the regulatory processes in different countries. For example, if a drug is produced from Nigeria and we have the same standards, we should be able to get it into Ghana. And vice versa. Currently, we have problems from Anglophone to Francophone to Luxophone. So we need some level of harmonization. We need capacity for local manufacturing and technology transfer. I mean, if you are manufacturing locally, you need to make sure that there's value for money. Because if you are manufacturing for a small population, you may not be as efficient. Then we have to look at the financing and procurement. We need to ensure that, one, we are able to procure our commodities within the region, and now with the African free trade, continental free trade, that would also help. And then we also need to put in money for our own people. Then we need to look at research. We need to drive the research into diseases affecting our own people. And then finally, we need to look at equity, access, and accountability. If the diseases are in a community, that is where the resources must go. So, in concluding, I'll leave you a quote with the first president of Ghana, Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And he said, "It is clear we must find an African solution to our problems, and that this can only be found in African unity. Divided, we are weak. United, Africa could be one of the greatest forces for good in the world." Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Professor Torpey. Our last speaker for the morning is Dr. Modupe Veronique Mccracken, who's going to be talking on harnessing digital innovations to revolutionize health systems, the opportunities for global impact. Dr. Mccracken, MD, MPH, is an obstetrician and a gynecologist who's a public health advisor within the Benin ARS. Her journey in the systems goes from Africa to America to Asia, and she's also a strategist in terms of supporting the development of strategic frameworks. She also believes in the added value of amplifying the voices of our young people and women and within the ecosystem, particularly the digital health ecosystem. She therefore serves as a mentor to many young women and young people in general, and in health and in tech. Dr. Modupe, please come forward. Thank you very much.
I'm a bit taller than Madam Moderator. Good morning to everybody, and thank you for being here. Can I please have my slides? Thank you. So it's a real pleasure to be here today and to discuss harnessing digital innovations to revolutionize health systems and opportunities for global impact. As a young woman from Benin Republic, I will be presenting in French. Donc pour commencer, on va découvrir le parcours de cette présentation avec une brève introduction, quelques mots-clés. On va parler du système de santé, du rôle de l'Afrique et de l'approche spécifique du Bénin, avant de discuter des méthodes d'exploitation qu'on peut mettre en place vraiment pour améliorer nos systèmes de santé, et on finira sur quelques recommandations. Il a déjà été dit par tous les présentateurs que la charge de la morbidité est la plus élevée en Afrique, nous le savons. Avec l'objectif de développement durable 3, qui vise la santé pour tous et le bien-être pour tous, on sait qu'il y a des problèmes de financement. Depuis 2010, le cube de l'OMS nous montre que le financement ne nous permet pas forcément d'atteindre tous les services nécessaires, toutes les populations nécessaires, ni de réduire les coûts qui sont imputés à la population. Alors la question à laquelle on doit répondre aujourd'hui, c'est comment est-ce qu'on utilise une idée qui peut sembler simple pour résoudre un problème mondial. Donc là, on voit un petit garçon avec son parapluie inversé, mais en fait, ce parapluie inversé, augmenté et analysé, est devenu un outil qui permet non seulement de capter de l'eau potable, mais aussi de capter de l'énergie solaire. Donc comment est-ce qu'on va faire cela dans le secteur de la santé? Avant d'en parler, on va s'étendre sur quelques mots-clés pour s'assurer qu'on a tous la bonne compréhension des termes. On parle beaucoup de transformation numérique ou de digitalisation, mais il faut être très clair, ce sont des termes différents et progressifs. La transformation numérique est l'aboutissement des différentes étapes de la digitalisation. Elle demande une approche multisectorielle de tous les partenaires, de tous les acteurs du secteur pour vraiment transformer nos institutions. Pas seulement pour dématérialiser un papier, mais vraiment pour transformer nos institutions et la manière dont nous offrons les soins. On ne peut pas parler de transformation numérique sans parler d'intelligence artificielle. L'intelligence artificielle peut sembler être nouvelle, mais ce n'est pas un sujet nouveau. Depuis 1950, il existe des outils d'intelligence artificielle, mais je suis sûre que dans la salle, il y a beaucoup d'entre vous qui ont utilisé ChatGPT ou Claude ou Fred AI dans la dernière semaine. Et effectivement, ChatGPT, en 2022, avait à peu près 1 million d'utilisateurs par semaine. En 2025, on a 1 milliard d'utilisateurs par semaine. Donc le défi avec l'intelligence artificielle, c'est le niveau d'adoption, l'amplitude avec laquelle l'intelligence artificielle est en train de pénétrer nos écosystèmes. Pour avoir des outils d'intelligence artificielle ou des chatbots qui sont pertinents, ils ont besoin de data. Et la data, dans le secteur de la santé, est une ressource illimitée. Le secteur de la santé produit énormément de data. Chaque interaction avec un patient produit de la data. Comment est-ce qu'on capitalise cette data? Comment est-ce qu'on stocke cette data? Comment est-ce qu'on utilise cette data? Ce sont des questions auxquelles on doit répondre. Et sur le continent, on sait qu'il y a des diversités de ressources, des diversités de qualité de système, de performance de système, mais il y a aussi du mouvement. On est tous ici à Accra, venus de différentes parties du continent. Idéalement, il faudrait que nos informations puissent se déplacer avec nous. On est venu avec nos cartes jaunes pour prouver qu'on avait le vaccin contre la fièvre jaune, mais il y a d'autres informations qu'on doit pouvoir emmener avec nous. Donc comment est-ce que dans notre espace régional, on arrive à partager nos données de manière efficiente et optimale? Finalement, le concept de leapfrog. Donc, a priori, c'est un jeu d'enfant. En français, c'est saute-mouton. Mais dans les concepts économiques et technologiques, il s'agit en fait de faire un bond en avant. L'idée, c'est que ceux qui sont devant nous ne sont pas à la place que nous allons occuper. Ceux qui sont devant nous sont à une place que nous devons dépasser. Et nous l'avons déjà fait avec Mobile Money. Nous avons dépassé les comptes bancaires. Nous avons dépassé les lignes téléphoniques à domicile pour arriver justement à un point où l'Afrique est le leader dans l'utilisation de mobile money et ça sert à tout le monde. Donc leapfrogging est quelque chose que l'Afrique a déjà fait et que nous pouvons faire. Parlons un peu de nos systèmes de santé. Nous connaissons les défis. Ils ont été mentionnés plusieurs fois pendant cette conférence. Un leadership fragmenté, des maladies émergentes, des infrastructures vétustes, le financement. On en a bien parlé, le financement, il est évasif, on ne sait pas trop d'où il va venir. Nos ressources humaines qui fuient, qui reviennent parfois, mais pas toujours, et leurs compétences. L'innovation, le collègue a parlé des médicaments qui viennent de l'étranger, de l'innovation qui vient de l'étranger, et évidemment nos données, la qualité de nos données, mais aussi comment on fait pour se partager les données, quelles sont les infrastructures en place pour transmettre les données. Alors quel est notre rôle? Et précisément, qu'est-ce que le Bénin est en train de faire? Le monde est de plus en plus africain. Dans 25 ans, 1 personne sur 4 sur la planète sera africaine. 1 personne sur 4 sera africaine. Ce que nous faisons est important et c'est essentiel. 25 ans, c'est aussi le temps que ça a pris pour les pays d'Asie du Sud, excusez-moi, de nous dépasser, de faire ce leapfrog, de faire ce bond en avant. Leur PIB a quasiment triplé le nôtre en 25 ans. Le futur nous appartient. On parle de financement et de marché, mais avec le développement de la santé numérique, il y a des ressources qui vont être générées. Il y a un marché à conquérir. Mais pour que ce marché soit effectivement conquis, il faut qu'on ait des stratégies continentales, il faut qu'on se mette d'accord, il faut qu'on s'organise. L'équipe de Smart Africa a mis en place un schéma directeur justement pour le développement de la santé numérique il y a à peu près 1 mois et demi. Je vous invite tous à le parcourir et à prendre connaissance de ces documents-là. L'Union africaine nous propose des protocoles de transfert d'informations au sein de l'Afrique. Prenons connaissance de ces documents-là. Au Bénin, nous avons un leadership avéré basé sur les résultats. Nous avons des visions qui nous ont permis de mettre en place de la régulation, de la standardisation et du e-governance à tous les niveaux du secteur du gouvernement, que ce soit le secteur public, mais aussi dans les secteurs du numérique et de la technologie. Et on est à la conférence ICASA, donc je suis obligée de parler de la prise en charge du sida. Et au Bénin, on a eu un innovateur, un early adopter, qui nous a montré comment une personne peut impacter un système national. Ce jeune docteur de la clinique Louis Pasteur, le docteur Lucien Dossou-Bété, est revenu au Bénin et a identifié un gap dans la prise en charge. Et avec son leadership, ses partenariats avec les pharmaceutiques privés, avec des donateurs, il a réussi à faire venir des médicaments qui étaient faits localement et qui étaient accessibles aux Béninois. Il a réussi à mettre en place le test de CD4, le test de la charge virale, et malheureusement, à cause de failles dans la logistique d'approvisionnement des intrants, le partenariat s'est arrêté. Mais le travail qu'il avait fait, le leadership qu'il a montré, a permis d'impacter tout un secteur national. Donc il suffit d'une personne, d'une vision et d'une exécution pour y arriver. Et dans nos pays en Afrique, on le voit déjà. Ici au Ghana, avec Claim It, il y a une amélioration de la gestion du remboursement des assurances. Le Kenya Digital Health Act, qui a été signé en 2023, a mis en place une agence de santé numérique qui est en train de voir comment distribuer les données de santé au sein du pays. Et le Maroc prévoit en 2026 une carte digitale qui aura toutes les informations médicales des patients, qui leur permettront donc d'avoir ces informations de manière fiable. Alors, les questions qu'on se pose souvent, c'est qu'est-ce que l'intelligence artificielle peut faire? Moi, je nous invite à nous poser une autre question. Qu'est-ce que l'intelligence artificielle devrait faire pour nous? L'intelligence artificielle aujourd'hui, elle est illimitée. Son potentiel est illimité. Si on arrive à dire l'intelligence artificielle ne peut pas, on n'a pas compris ce que c'est que l'intelligence artificielle. Donc il faut vraiment poser la question, qu'est-ce que l'intelligence artificielle doit faire pour nous? Les collègues ont parlé d'essais cliniques, de médicaments. On peut utiliser de l'intelligence artificielle dans tous ces développements-là, du diagnostic, de la prédiction d'épidémiologie. Tout est possible. À nous de décider ce qu'on veut faire et comment on va le faire. Au Bénin, on a compris que les ressources humaines sont importantes et nous formons la jeunesse, la plus petite jeunesse, à la robotique, au coding et à l'intelligence artificielle, parce qu'on sait qu'on aura besoin justement d'une armée de gens pour pouvoir nous accompagner dans cette transformation. Il y a les Olympiades de l'intelligence artificielle, auxquelles peu de pays africains ont été reconnus, que ce soit en or, en argent ou en bronze, le Bénin fait partie des pays qui ont eu une reconnaissance avec mention honorable. Nous devons être plus présents sur la scène. On est aussi en train de mettre en place depuis plusieurs années des lois d'interopérabilité, des normes de cybersécurité et des lois de protection des données. Et on a aussi en place l'identifiant unique. Donc grâce à l'ANIP, l'Agence nationale d'identification personnelle, chaque Béninois a un identifiant personnel. Et avec l'interopérabilité de X-Road, toutes ces informations-là communiquent. L'Agence des systèmes d'information et du numérique permet la connectivité et la transmission des informations sur le territoire. L'APDP protège les données et l'ARS, où je travaille, l'autorité de régulation, permet justement la régulation des données de santé. Alors avec cet identifiant unique, l'interopérabilité et le rôle de la SIN, on peut avoir justement des interactions de données, mais ça, c'est limité. Il y a tellement plus de sources de données qui peuvent entrer dans le National Health Data, donc l'avenir nous appartient. On a aussi eu en novembre la déclaration de Cotonou, on a une stratégie d'intelligence artificielle et on est vraiment en train d'optimiser l'utilisation des systèmes de santé au Bénin. Alors pour revenir à la question du départ avec le parapluie, comment est-ce qu'on va faire pour partir de là où nous sommes et leapfrog, faire le bond en avant pour aller au-delà de ce qui nous est présenté? On voit souvent des dossiers patients médicaux qui ressemblent à l'image du milieu, mais est-ce que ça nous convient? Est-ce que c'est pour nous? Et sinon, autorisons nos jeunes à inventer, accompagnons-les pour qu'on arrive à quelque chose qui nous serve à nous et qui soit utile. Alors je vais finir sur mes recommandations. C'est déjà, la santé numérique est déjà là. Les plateformes se multiplient. Pour l'instant, on est en train de laisser faire cette innovation. Mais on doit la canaliser, on doit l'orienter et la guider. Alors pour ça, nous devons collaborer régionalement, soutenir les cadres réglementaires continentaux. Nous devons nous développer localement. On doit avoir des innovation hubs, des sandbox de régulation. La data, la data, la data. Améliorons son utilisation, sa collection et son stockage. Nos ressources humaines, retenons-les. Ces jeunes dont on parle, faisons tout ce qu'on peut pour les retenir, pour les former, pour augmenter leurs compétences. Et finalement, respectons notre culture traditionnelle et nos valeurs traditionnelles. C'est l'Afrique pour l'Afrique. Je vous remercie. Je remercie particulièrement son Excellence le Président Patrice Talon, grâce à qui j'ai pu être ici, le ministre de la Santé, toute l'équipe du Bénin, dont le docteur Valentine Kikim Médégan et le médecin-colonel majeur, l'équipe du CNLSTP, le président de l'autorité de régulation et ma famille. Merci.
Thank you very much to our three speakers, starting from Professor Opong to Professor Torpey and also Dr. Mccracken. That is the end of our session, and we acknowledge the recommendations. I think Africa, we have such an opportunity for us to change our systems. Hearing starting from our medicines, our traditional medicine, where we have an opportunity to invest in traditional medicine and really grow it as an economic industry that would be able to compete globally. The second one is the issue of innovation and the access to those innovations that we've seen across the different diseases. And the issue of adoption and the investment within those is going to be critical. The third point is the opportunity that comes with the digital transformation, particularly the area of artificial intelligence and what we can achieve. And the question is, are we going to leapfrog? Are we going to invest? Are we going to adopt? And is this the future that we are looking for? And here's our opportunity. We don't have another one. Thank you very much for everybody who has come in this morning, and hopefully you'll have a best day. We do have another session now to come in after we finish. Thank you very much. And thank you to our speakers. And can we also get the photos? Thank you very much.